if you're a Canon photographer, you're probably familiar with the picture style system for controlling your images. And well, if you're not, I've got a 5-part video series looking at what they are, how to work with them, what they do, and ultimately how to even customize them. So, maybe you'll want to check that out. However, for professional video applications, the picture style system doesn't really offer the kind of control and capabilities that are needed in that environment. Now, to address this problem, Canon created another image control system called the Custom Picture, or CP system. Now, compared to the picture style system, the Custom Picture system provides a much greater level of control over all of the details of the image. But with that increased control comes also increased complexity and a much higher level of required technical understanding to really leverage or to use all of the features in the system. Now, this custom picture system has been the core of Canon's pro video and cinema cameras going back to at least 2010. However, with the release of the EOS R1 and R5 Mark II in 2024, Canon has now brought that system over to their hybrid EOS cameras as well. So over the course of the next several videos, we're going to dig into this custom picture system in all of its gory details. We're going to look at everything from the basics of where the settings are and how to change them and how to navigate all of the menus, all the way to what each of the individual image adjustments do and how they ultimately affect the image. Now, on top of that, we're going to do this not only for Canon's Cinema EOS OS. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the EOS R5C, but the settings and menus all pretty much are the same across the rest of the cinema cameras as well. But on top of that, we're also going to look at Canon's hybrid EOS cameras. But again, the implementation and menus are all exactly the same on the EOS R1, which are currently the only two cameras that support the picture style system, at least as I'm recording this. Now, all that said, in this video, we're going to be starting with the very basics, and we'll be familiarizing ourselves with the menus and settings that are part of the custom picture system on the EOS R5C. And of course, by extension, also the Cinema EOS counterparts like the C80, C70, and C400. We'll talk about what makes custom pictures different from picture styles, and we'll get acquainted with the menus and settings and look at how to go about changing what custom picture file you're using, where you go to edit it, some of the functions that you can use in the edit, and how to save and transfer one of those files off of your camera or onto your camera from a flash card. Now, of course, as always, I have chapter markers for each section in this video, so if you want to skip ahead to a specific part that you're interested, by all means, please do so. With all of that said, what then makes the custom picture system different from the picture style system? Well, for me, this comes down to basically who the system was designed for, and as a result, the kinds of control you get over the image and how that control is expressed, so like what nomenclature is used and how it's designed to be used. Canon's picture style system, the one in their still cameras, is designed to give your average user, even somebody who is brand new to Canon cameras, a way to control the look and feel of their images. Truthfully, there's really only a handful of controls, I think it's 6 or 7, that one really needs to deal with, and their function and operation is fairly straightforward. In fact, if you've ever worked with even an iPhone or a camera phone, you'll understand things like saturation and contrast, which is what the picture style provides. Now, on the other hand, the custom picture system is designed less to be about creatively controlling how your images are rendered. It can still do that, but it is more about giving professional users the ability to precisely tune and adjust all of the details of the image within the confines of broadcast video image standards. This means that there are far more than settings than there are in the picture style system. In fact, there's almost 10 times as many available. And that the system as a whole is generally just not that approachable to new users. Things are named funny with the tradition in video and broadcast, as opposed to things like saturation and contrast that's super obvious to most, again, people. So that brings me to the next question, which is, when is the custom picture system used on your camera? Well, since we're talking about the R5C and that therefore all of Canon's cinema cameras, the reality is the custom picture system is always used. Anytime you're shooting compressed video, it is going. So compressed video by this extent means anytime you're shooting in, say, XF-AVC or with the MP4 container in either AVC, which is also known as H.264 on some of these cameras, or HEVC compression. And of course, on the C80 and C400, they now have new XF, HEVC, and HEVC-S nomenclature for these formats, but they're all the compressed formats. Now, if you're a raw video shooter, the custom picture system doesn't affect the raw data that's being stored in your files. Moreover, as far as I can tell, it seems like Canon may store the custom picture information as metadata in those raw files. I'm not 100% certain on that, but from all the software that I've used after the fact, so Canon's Cinema Raw development software or third-party NLEs like DaVinci Resolve that support Canon's raw video format, none of those cared or rendered or did anything with any custom picture information, assuming it's even there. Now, that said, while the custom picture settings don't affect the raw video data being recorded to your file, the cameras will still use the settings that you choose in rendering the live view that you see both on the screen in the EVF and even on the HDMI output. So changing custom picture settings can affect the image you see when shooting, even if you are not changing or they aren't changing the image file that's ultimately being recorded when you shoot in raw video. So with the introductions out of the way, let's start by familiarizing ourselves with the custom picture system, where the settings are, specifically where the settings are, and how to select a custom picture file, as Canon calls them, for you to use. Now, in this video, we're going to tour the custom picture menus on the EOS R5C. I know I keep saying this, but by extension, other Canon Cinema EOS cameras will be very similar. That said, an important note. I know I said that this new system is on the R5 Mark II and R1, but if you are one of those users, those cameras will be covered specifically in the next video in the series, as the interface and menus are different. So, on Canon Cinema EOS cameras, the custom picture settings have their own section in the camera's menu system. It's this one here, labeled CP. Going to the CP section, you'll find 3 entries in the menu that you can choose from: Select CP File, Edit CP File, and Save CP File. Select CP File is where you go to choose the currently active custom picture file that the camera is using. Now, the active CP file controls not only how the image is rendered and therefore how it's recorded, but it also controls what file you're editing when you make adjustments to the settings, and what file will be transferred to, or what will be overwritten on the camera when you transfer a file from a flash card. Now, currently Canon cameras support 20 different internal custom picture files, or separate configurations. By default, several of these are pre-configured for various recording standards like BT709, HDR-PQ, or Canon's log gammas. The remaining files have a simple default configuration. It happens to be BT709 or a variant of that, and they are available for you to go and customize however you want. Now, that said, all 20 files can be customized to your liking. You don't have to keep the defaults the way they were. Now, on the R5C, there are 8 factory pre-configured files and 12 user customizable ones. Though, again, the number of pre-configured files is going to vary from model to model depending on when that camera was released, what gamma curves Canon had at the time that the camera supported, and what alternate or variations on the Rec 709 format where Canon had available at that time. The next entry we come to in the menu is Edit CP File, and this is where you go to adjust all of the settings for the currently selected CP file. This includes changing its name, protecting it against changes, or resetting it. And of course, all of the image settings. Now, the final option in the menu is Save CP File, and I gotta be honest, I think this section's name is somewhat misleading. The reality is you don't need to save your file after you make changes in the edit section, as this kind of implies. They're actually saved automatically as soon as you make them. What this section is actually about is transferring a configuration or file from the internal storage to an SD card or vice versa. You can use this functionality either to back up or restore customized configurations that you made, or transfer them to another identical camera model or another identical model camera so that you have multiple cameras using the same configuration. So now that I've covered how the menu is laid out, let's take a look at how to do some stuff in it. And we're going to start by changing the currently active CP file or custom picture file. Now, as with most things, Canon actually provides multiple ways to go about doing this. Of course, one is through the menu that I just described, and the other is actually through the camera's direct touch menu system, which I'll talk about in a second. So to do this through the menus, first open the camera's menu system, obviously by pressing the menu button on the camera, and then navigate to the custom picture menu section. Then select the Select CP File entry, and then select the file that you want to use from the camera's list. There will be 20 of them. Now, the other option is to use the Direct Touch Control interface and the Direct Touch menu system. Now, to do this, first touch the Direct Touch Control virtual button here on the LCD screen. Then touch the Record Settings virtual button here in the top left corner. Now we need to switch over to page 2 in this menu system, and you can do that by swiping left or right until you get there, using one of the camera's dials, or pushing left or right on the joystick. You'll find on page 2 that there is a Select CP File entry or button at the top of the right-hand column. Now, after touching the Select CP File virtual button, simply touch the virtual button that corresponds to the custom picture file you want to use. Now, obviously, there isn't enough room on the screen to show them all, so to scroll this list, you can use touch and drag up and down on the joysticks or any of the dials. However, in this menu system, to actually select the file you want to use, you must touch it. You can't use any of the physical controls to do that. Now, of course, you can back out of this page by pressing the Return virtual button here in the top left corner of the screen, or by pressing the physical Cancel button on the back of your camera. Now, additionally, you can use the button customization system to create a shortcut to either the top-level CP file menu or the directly to the Select CP File menu entry specifically. You can add the Select CP File entry to your My Menu section as well if you are so inclined. So now that you've changed the active custom picture file, how do you know which one you're actually using? Well, of course, you can always go back and look at either the custom picture file menu or the direct touch camera settings page for that. It'll tell you there. However, the active custom picture file number is also shown on the Display 1 Live View overlay. That's this one with all of the icons, and it's found here towards the middle of the left column. Although, be aware this can be disabled in the menu customizations if you don't want it. So if you don't see it and you hit display a couple times and it doesn't show up, that's probably why. Now, unfortunately on the R5C, the current custom picture file number is not displayed on the top LCD like it actually is on the R5 II and R1. So now that we know how to go about changing the custom picture file that's active, let's talk a little bit about actually editing them. Now, to be clear, in this video, we're going to talk only about 3 settings in the edit menu: rename, protect, and reset. I'm going to actually cover the gamma curves, color spaces, color matrices, and basically all of the other adjustments in much more detail in subsequent videos, because it's going to take forever to look at the testing and demonstrations of just how each of those settings impacts your engine or image and how you might want to use it. Now, once you've selected a custom picture file and you want to go about editing it, this is done through the Edit Custom Picture File menu. There is no touch interface or other access to this that I'm aware of. In this menu, you are presented with all of the options that are available for editing that custom picture file's setting. Though some of those options may not be available, and this depends on whether or not the file is protected and which gamma curves that file actually uses. You may find that many or all but one of the custom picture entries are unavailable for editing. For example, you'll see this if you attempt to edit any of the factory pre-configured custom picture files. This is the result of that file being protected. This guards it against accidental changes, being reset, or being overwritten by loading a custom picture file from an SD card. Now, all of the factory configured custom picture files are set up this way by default. However, you can apply this same protection to your own user files as well, and you can turn the protection off on the factory configured ones so you can edit them. Either way, this is done using the Protect entry, which is second down from the top of this menu list. Now, once protection is disabled, you are free to edit any of the other settings in the file, at least as long as they're available based on the gamma curve that you're using. If you are creating or customizing your own custom picture file, then you will probably want to give it a custom name so that you can tell what it does. This is done using the Rename entry at the very top of the Edit page list. I think it should probably be called Name. For example, I set up my CP8 file to record in the Canon Log3 gamma curve, but using the BT709 color space instead of Canon's Cinema Gamut, and consequently I named it something like C.log3/BT709 so I could tell what it was instead of the default user 8 or just Canon Log3. It's way easier to know what it is when it's text you can read than having to remember a number. Custom picture file names can be up to 16 characters long, use upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols, and remember they're there for your benefit. The camera doesn't actually do anything with them, it's just so you know what's going on. Now, the final edit page entry that I'm going to cover in this video is Reset. Selecting this allows you to reset the custom picture file to one of several baseline states. How many will depend on your camera. When resetting a custom picture file, you can choose to reset it to any of the factory pre-configured presets. When you select Reset, you will be prompted to choose which of those presets you want the camera to use for that file, and the camera's live preview will show you the look of the preset that you are going to reset it to. With the exception of the presets that start with the word User, all of these defaults will also set the name to something other than the C:\user number convention that the user files use, and will turn on protection for that file automatically, making it uneditable until you turn it off. So this brings me to the last function you're going to find in the Custom Picture menu section, and that is the Save Custom Picture File entry. Now, as I said at the beginning, this entry isn't about saving your settings when you change a file. It's about transferring a file from the camera's memory onto or off of an SD card. Now, that said, be aware that one of the limitations of Canon's Cinema EOS OS is that you can only load or save custom picture files to an SD card. Moreover, for cameras that have two SD card slots only, or SD card slots only, so for example, the C70 and C80, only the second, or B, SD card slot can actually be used. Now, there are two entries here in this menu, Save to SD card and Load from SD card, and honestly, they do exactly what they say on the label, though obviously if you don't have an SD card in your camera, neither will be enabled for you to use. To save a custom picture file to your SD card, first select the file that you want to use using the Select CP File menu at the very top of the Custom Picture menu section. Then select Save to SD card from the Save CP File submenu. Now, when you do that, you will see this screen, and you will be given the option to either create a new custom picture file on your card or overwrite one that's already been saved, if there are any. If you have any custom picture files on the card, then scrolling through them will preview their look and feel on the live image as you select them. This way you know what you're replacing or what it's doing as you go through and look at them. And selecting Save once you've chosen whether to save a new file or replace an existing one will open a confirmation prompt before the action is carried out. And you will be notified of the success and failure, or failure, I should say, of that saving process before being returned to the custom picture menu page. Now, something to be aware of. You can only store 20 custom picture files for your model camera on each SD card. You can actually have more than 20 on a card, but they would be from different camera models, and the camera just doesn't worry about those. Files that are already on the card will be listed in the save and load screens as you scroll through them with the prefix SD number, followed by that file's name when it was saved. Now, once you reach that 20 file limit on your card, you will no longer see the option to create a new file on your camera, and you'll have to overwrite one of the existing ones or load the card into your computer and delete them or something to that effect. Now, loading a file from the card uses a very similar process. Start by selecting the internal CP file number that you want to use or to import your settings into, basically that you want to overwrite. Then use the Load from SD card entry in the Save CP File submenu to load that file from your card. Now, the CP file same selection screen, the same one you saw with the save system, will come back up. This time it will preview the look of the file that's on the card that you're loading from. Again, this is so you can see what effect it will have on your image. Now, once you've found the file that you want, select it, then select Load, and again, you'll be asked to confirm that you want to replace the current in-camera file with the one that you've selected. Select OK to proceed, and the camera will load that custom picture file off of the SD card into the currently active file slot and make it ready for use. Now, as an aside, custom picture files are saved in the file system on your card in a folder called C_pict, P-I-C-T, inside the private folder that's on the root directory of your SD card. And these files are named in the format cpict, C-P-I-C-T, followed by 3 characters .cpf. Now, of those 3 characters, the last 2 digits are going to be a number from 01 to 20. That is the 20 files that the camera can store on each card. And the third to last digit is a number or letter that deconflicts different camera models. So you could have card files from, say, an R5 Mark II and an R5C and a C400 all saved on the same card. Now, in my testing, my R5C used the letter I, while my R5 Mark II used the number 2 in that third from last spot. Now, this is something I would like to gather a little bit more information on, just out of idle curiosity more than anything else, for cameras that basically I don't have or have access to. So if you happen to have a Cinema EOS camera, at least one other than the R5C, or an EOS R1, I'd be very interested if you would to know, and if you could let us know, what file names your camera generates when you save a custom picture file in the comments below. Now, I should say, because the thought crossed my mind as well, Canon also performs checks on the files. There's information in the file itself to ensure that it's for your camera's model. I thought about it, I know, I tried. You can't just rename the custom picture file from one camera and use it on another. Otherwise, we could potentially have Canon Log 2 on an R5C if we just copied the custom picture file that contained the Canon Log 2 settings from a camera that supported it. But that doesn't work. Now finally, there is one last custom picture file related setting that I want to cover before I wrap this video up. When shooting in XF-AVC mode, you can choose to include the active custom picture file with your recorded clip. This is enabled using the Add CP File setting found in the Metadata submenu, which itself is found on page 4 of the Recording/Media Setup menu section. Turning this on will include a CPF file with the same name as the MXF file of that recording or of the recording it pertains to. Now, you can in turn use these custom picture files to reload the custom picture settings that were used when that recording was made, but you can't do this directly. To load one of these files, you actually need to bring the card onto your computer, move that file into, or copy it, into the private cpict folder where all the other ones are stored, and rename it to the cpict character.cpf convention that your camera uses. After doing that, you can then restore that custom picture file to one of the internal slots using the Save CP File menu and specifically the Load from SD card entry in it. So, I think that about covers at least getting around the custom picture system on the R5C and, of course, the rest of the Cinema EOS cameras that use the same menus and settings. Next time, we're going to take a look at the same processes, but at how they apply to Canon's hybrid EOS cameras, specifically the EOS R5 Mark II. But as I said, there are some marked differences between those cameras and the cinema cameras. That said, I hope you found this useful, or at least interesting. If you did, let me know by hitting that like button. Also, if this kind of thing seems like it might be your kind of thing, please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Finally, if you'd like to help and support this channel, you can help us for free by liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and leaving a comment with your experiences. Likewise, you can support us by hitting that thanks button or buying yourself something you've always wanted from one of the affiliate links in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.